Okay, welcome to Bangalore IT Pro User Group July 2021 meetup. And this event is powered by Techaholic. Thanks for them for organizing and giving us an opportunity to connect together. Please do follow us in our Twitter handle at BIT Pro, and I'm Techaholic. And you come to know a lot about the upcoming events and what we exactly do on the tech conferences. Okay, and today's session is about automating the Azure functions with Bicep using Azure Pipelines. And I'm your host, Chendrayan Venkatesan. You can follow me at Chendrayan V and my website, and I blog in about-powershell.com. So before getting into the event, I just want to set some context, what we do in this session. So we're going to just do the build, test, and release, a 3 simple step for IT professionals, those who can successfully go ahead and deploy Azure Function app in 3 given environments. That's development, UI, and production. Start from your laptop to your Azure repos, run your pipeline, and that's going to do the magic. So that's what exactly we are going to do. We don't do a vertical deep dive on Azure Functions development. Instead, we take a step up and we will look on the function host. All right, hope that makes context clear. So today's agenda is, first we will start over with what is Bicep and overview of it, a short overview of it. And of course, introduction about the Azure Functions, where I'll just take a quick tour on Azure portal to create Azure Functions. If someone who have missed my previous session, it's just a quick recap of it. And creating Azure Function using the Azure PowerShell and the short introduction to the hosting plans. And we have created a small demo. So I just want to start with the project scaffolding, how to start defining your project structure and how to start building out your pipelines and how to configure your function host and functions. And in Azure Functions, we're going to use some tools for VS Code extension, and we do the development test locally, and we're going to publish it to the cloud. That's our end goal for today's session. So about Bicep, it's just an alternate of the JSON to develop the ARM templates. So most of you will be well aware of using the Terraform. So if you look into the Terraform and Bicep, you can compare it easily. More or less, it looks together. There is a YouTube video which will give you a clear picture of what Bicep does and what Terraform does. So this session is not about comparing it. This is just to give you the overview of Bicep. In short, like Bicep is a domain-specific language, which is an admin-friendly to deploy Azure resources. Imagine that you take a lot of hours and effort to go spend your time to build an ARM template and then make some mistakes on it, make your hand dirt and get that working. And you have to get on to the testing. A lot of works for IT professionals and system administrators, right? And it's not that easy for us to go ahead and build the ARM template. And Microsoft heard it. So Microsoft want to go ahead and give a simple way and reduce the complexity and give a good authoring experience to provision Azure resources. They came up with their tool called Bicep. As I said, it's a DSL domain specific language. It's not some kind of a programming language to build some kind of an application. It's meant to author a Azure resource and deploy it, right? And it's just an abstraction of a JSON ARM template. So whatever the capabilities ARM template is giving, it persists in Bicep as well. Frankly, if you compare Bicep with a Terraform is a bigger tool and it has a lot of additional features. Bicep is growing and it will grow a lot. And it's just a baby. Okay, you can't immediately compare and say that Terraform wins all the way. Bicep has got some cool feature which you will see in my demo. There is a references document I've given in this PPT. Once the session is over, we will share the PPT and all other contents. You can make use of it. So you can go through the Bicep and it is there in Microsoft Learn as well. It gives you a lot of hands-on how to use Bicep in a different scenarios. For our session and demo, we are going to provision only the Azure functions, right? That means we're going to do the function host and functions and we will build the infrastructure. Similar way, you can go build different resources using Bicep. So now I just want to give a quick introduction about Azure Functions. In a nutshell, it's a serverless solution from Microsoft. There are a lot of serverless solution Microsoft has given in Azure, like Logic App and some other things. So Azure Function is one among that, and it's very popular and it's very IT pro friendly. When I first looked into Azure Functions, I was a bit skeptical to step into it and make use of it. I didn't understand the nuances of it, and I thought it's not admin friendly, it's a developer friendly. Later, when PowerShell was introduced, I think way back 4.5 years before, it's almost 5.5 years now, Azure Functions been introduced in the industry. So when PowerShell was introduced, I was a bit excited. So that's when I came to know, okay, functions is something like it's going to give me some more serverless solutions. How is what exactly I'm going to explain now. So Azure Functions is nothing but a chunk of code. A functions is a chunk of code. You're going to run it on someone's data center. That's mean you're going to run it on Azure Cloud. You don't need to worry about your infrastructure. You are not going to provision a server. You don't need to worry about your network, and you don't need to worry about anything to host or run your functions. That means your application. Consider you're going to run an application as a system administrator on the Azure Cloud without spending much time on building infrastructure. Yes, having said that, it doesn't mean that you don't need to worry about anything. Minor configurations and other setups you have to take care. That's what we will cover it in our next slide deck. I will just walk you through what we are going to do it in the function host configuration. How Microsoft is going to provide you a platform to run your application. So they're going to give us an up-to-date resources to run our application. That means if I want to run some kind of a fancy web application, which is a single HTML file, or I just want to run some kind of a heavy computational things, what I want to do is I want to write a function, and through the function host, I let system knows that what I want to run my application, right? That is what exactly we are going to do through the project scaffolding. We are going to define that structure and tell Microsoft what we are demanding. And in other words, Azure Functions is also a system logic as a functions, and what exactly it will deliver you is a compute on demand. It will allow you to run a function and it will provide you a compute. When your demand increase, say for example, today you may have 100 requests per day. In future, you may end up with 1,000 requests per day, right? In that case, you need to auto scale your infrastructure, which is provided by the Azure Function app by itself, by native. So that's why it's called compute on demand in a two significance way. From where we are going to get the computational resource is purely based on our hosting plans. I'll come to the hosting plan in short. Hosting plan is nothing but you're going to define what kind of a function host you're going to choose and how you're going to run it. Are you going to do a consumption plan, or you're going to go for the a premium, or you go for the dedicated app service plan? So we will be covering it in short. Before that, I want to give some key features of Azure Functions. So as I said, it provides us an automated scaling. That means when your demand increase, it's going to provide you additional resources to meet your demand. So that's one of the key feature of Azure Functions. And it also provides a seamless connection to other Azure services. That means how it is going to do that is through the integrated programming model. So I don't need to write an additional piece of code to connect to Azure storage blobs. So I have Azure Functions, which is written in any of your favorite language, be it C#, Node.js, or PowerShell, whatever it may be. You don't need to put an additional piece of code to speak to other Azure services, be it storage account or be it web app or something else. So how that is going to happen is through the trigger and bindings. So it will mostly happen through the bindings, right? So we don't need to get detail about trigger and bindings right away because it may confuse few. So we need to go ahead and have a separate session for trigger and binding. We will arrange one for that. So for now, try to understand that it is based on the integrated programming model Azure Function. So it will allow you to speak to other Azure services without an additional set of codes, right? And we also want to make sure that any of the programming language, what we know, should be supported by the Azure Functions, all right? So you may be familiar with C#, or you may be with Node.js, or you may be from PowerShell, Python. So Azure Functions support it. And consider that if Functions is not supporting any of your language, they come up with a custom handler. That means you know a language, okay, and that supports HTTP primitives. In that case, you can go ahead and provision a custom handler and make your functions working. I'm from a IT professional background. I don't have a good knowledge on the custom handler things. Provided if I have some time and get into it, make my hand dirty, I will arrange one session for that. How to do that? We tried once with the project language called Balena. You can search in GitHub. There is a language called Balena. We tried with that. It worked. I don't want to get into a demo session with that because I didn't have a deep knowledge on it, or I don't have a nuances. But for now, we will cover only on the PowerShell. Okay. So I think I've given enough brief theory about like what is Azure Functions and what exactly it's going to do. Now I'm going to show you how we're going to quickly create the Azure Functions in the portal. So we will get on the actions from now. No more PPT. So first, let me get on to my Azure portal. So if you search for Azure Function app, I've created two Azure Function app. Before creating a new one, let me delete one of my resource groups so that I can successfully do my demo. So please make the session interactive. If you have any questions, please put it on chat. We can quickly look into it and try to answer it. Okay, I've deleted the demo resource groups, whatever I've created. First thing first, we go ahead and create a function app. What we see first is the subscription name. Of course, it's very straightforward. We're going to create a new function app. I go create something like iDemo. That's my resource group, and get a stick demo. You have to choose the function app which needs to be unique because it will have a DNS entry. You can't pick which has been already taken. So here the tech demo is already taken. So I'll name it as Techaholic demo. Good, it is available. You can see the green tick mark right over here. So it's fantastic. So we got a function app team. You can host your function app on your the Docker container too. We will not be covering that in this demo. So I'm going to choose my runtime stack as PowerShell core because we are from PowerShell background. And the latest version of the PowerShell over here is 7.0. The 6.0 is obsolete. No more support being given for that. And if you are hosting your function app on 6.0 in your workplace, or you want to migrate, you have to do it by yourself. And if in case you identified any security issues in 6.0, function app team will not support that, right? Though there is a support for PowerShell 6, function app team will not support it. And you can go ahead and choose any of your region, which is desired and which gives you the optimal performance, right? So here comes the hosting plan. So I have to discuss a few things about it. So here we have got two functions, plan type. One is consumption, another one is functions premium. What is consumption plan is you're going to pay for what you have consumed. It's simple as that. For example, I have a function which is going to run for a few minutes. Say consider that it's going to run for a minute. The number of minute you consume to run your function app, the consumption of the storage, that's what exactly you're going to pay. And there is a disadvantage of using the consumption plan when you are having a heavy load. That means you have to go for the cold start. That means when you have a consumption plan, you will not have a dedicated compute engine to run your program, your application. So when you're going to fire the function app, invoke the function app endpoint, functions endpoint, you need to have an idle wait time. Then a compute engine will be allocated. That's when your program starts. So that idle wait time is the problematic scenario for some of the what do you call it, scenario. We can't tell that consumption plan is the right choice for everything. But if you really require a consumption plan for a low load and you're okay with the cold start issues, you can very well host it. Wherein the functions premium, you can choose your compute power.
Sorry to interrupt you. Can you just scroll up? Some of the people are not able to see the drop down options.
Sure.
So this is the, I think, maximum. Okay.
Yeah, do this. There's only two options here, consumption and functions premium. All right. So I hope this is clear now. This will be too small. All right. So you can choose the consumption or the function premium, whatever we want to do. So if I choose a functions premium, so I'll be getting additional features where I choose my plan and SKU, size of the compute, how many CPU I want and how many core I want, what is the memory I want to define. So I can define it very well, and I will be having a dedicated compute engine. And you will pay for that compute engine, and that's what exactly you will be charged. For both the plans, you will be having 1 million request free. That means the first 1 million request, whatever you're going to hit, Microsoft will not charge for that. That's in the documentation. But please make note, you will not be charged only for the request you're sending, but you will be charged for the storage consumption. The transaction you make it on the storage account, you will be charged. So you have to make note of it. It's been given as a conditional supply in Microsoft page. So you go into Microsoft costing site, where over there you will see that storage account will be charged even in the consumption plan, only for the transactions you do. If in case you have taken a networking a VNet integrated function app, you will be paying for the VNet as well. Simple as that. So now I'm going to choose the consumption plan. Here comes an additional feature called application insights, where you need to monitor your request, failure, success, and all other things, right? If you want, you go ahead and enable it. I recommend you enable the application insights, and you have to pay whatever application insights charge you. And this is to go ahead and monitor your Azure Functions behavior. How many requests been passed through, what is the latency, what's the performance, what's the metrics, a clean dashboard, everything you can play around with this. If you're good in application insights and a Quisto query, you're going to rule it. You're going to have a lot of dashboards and stuffs, and you can see that, right? So I'm not going to do that now. And this is just a tags. We know all what it exactly does. Go for review create. So this is how we create the function app in the portal, right? Simple as that. The same thing, how we are going to do it in the Bicep is our demo is. Before getting into that, let me stop this. I don't want to create this function app. So here I've got a couple of function app created. I don't think this will be up and running. Let me get on to my code and show you quickly what we have done in the project structure. So I've got a root folder, name it anything. In my case, I have named it as iSharePoint. This is just a dummy name. We are not going to worry about that, but I will have a quick demo on how the webhook works for the DevOps. Okay, that's the demo we're going to see. So in my root folder, I have created a folder for pipeline where I keep my YAML files to keep my build and release pipeline and template files, whatever I want to define. Okay, don't get in deep about it. If you are from a system administrator background and not worked on YAML file, nothing to worry about it. I'll show you step by step. So we have got a pipeline folder where I've got two YAML files. And I have created a SRC source folder where I have my functions code. So here I have to take a step for a minute and explain you what is Azure Functions and what is Function App. So if you go to the Azure portal, we see it as a function app, right? So if you create any function app, that means it's a host you have created associated to the app service plan where your compute engine is associated. That means a container or a VM which has been associated to your application service plan and given to your function app to run. So function app will take care of the hosting platform, which will allow you to run the functions on top of it. So my function app says it's a Windows, PowerShell core stack, .NET runtime. That means I can run only the PowerShell core codes in that. I can't go and run a C# code on top of it. So that's where I define my function host. And over here, I define my environmental variables, secrets, whatever I want to do. Functions is chunk of code which will run on top of function app. So with that explanation, I'll come to the VS Code. So here, this is a chunk of code, whatever I said, right? Don't worry about looking a lot of folders and files. There is a quick, easy way. I'll show you how to do that as well. So this is a source folder where I have my functions. So the templates is the folder where I have my Bicep file. So this is a file which tells me how I create my Azure functions, how I host my function. So if I say, first I create a function app, then I deploy the functions inside the function app. So this is my main Bicep file where I'm scoping this target scope is set to subscription level. That means I'm going to create a resource group, storage account, associated resources for the function app, and then I'm going to deploy the functions inside it. So first thing first, I'm going to create a resource group. The syntax, whatever you see here, looks more or less similar or exactly like a Terraform. Okay, so if you're from Terraform background, there will be bits and pieces of changes, but I don't tell this is an exact lift and shift of Terraform. There is one major difference I'll tell you. If I have a Bicep file, when this Bicep file is compiled it transpiles exactly the JSON output. Okay, if this transpiles, you will get an ARM template, right? So that ARM template, you will use it to deploy to your cloud and provision the resource. Wherein in Terraform, you just write the Terraform template or TF files or whatever it is, and then you run it, it's going to deploy it. We don't have that feature in Bicep now, or probably it might have been available by this time, I'm not sure. But that's the goal. So soon we will also be having that feature where you can directly deploy without transpiling to the JSON. So if you say, seeing to this particular piece of code, line number 5 till 11, we are declaring a resource group authoring. So we are authoring a resource group with our API version 2021 4 and 1. So I don't need to type in anything by myself. The Bicep extension in VS Code will take care of it. Say, for example, I want to create a resource here and say call it as a storage account or something like that. And yeah, just type in, you will get the IntelliSense. How cool it is. So I can choose the API version. Of course, this is a very good key feature. I will tell you, you can go ahead and choose which API meets your need. More or less, it looks alike, but you can go ahead and see the features in the documentation side. If you want to use a preview on POC platform, they will go ahead and do it. That's it. So this is going to give me an squiggy error saying that, hey, you're missing out key values apartment. So what is that? I don't know. Just hover the mouse over there and see. It's going to give you your missing kind, location, name, and school. So how cool it is. So yeah, of course, the storage account need a name. And then do a control space. That's going to give you the drop-down IntelliSense, and you can choose what you want to type in here. Instead of typing, you can just choose it from the list. And you can just choose what else is missing. Okay, so this is another good example. While I'm creating a storage account, so this error message clearly says your target scope is subscription and it's not permitted. So yeah, that's a bummer, right? Like we can't go out and create a storage account when my target scope is subscription. But it's not going to stop us because you can do a module. So like in Terraform, you can also do a module in Bicep where I segregated my code. That means like it's independent. I can call the module files. It's a chunk of other Bicep file, which I call to provision a resource. So I've got a module and I give a friendly name for my module here while calling the module file. And this is my file name, actual file name, which is under the modules folder. Right. So just giving up a recap on the folder structure. I have a pipeline. I have a source folder for my functions. I have a template file. So this template file has one folder called modules. Underneath the modules, you can have all number of Bicep files. For VNet, or you want to create separate for your storage account, you want to do one for your other resources. It's up to you. You can design your infrastructure. You can plan your infrastructure, or you can just go ahead and plan your scaffolding, which be friendly for your entire team. Rather than only you understand it, you can make it user friendly for all the IT pros in your team. So in my modules folder, I have got one file function app, which is going to provision 3 resources. Yes, of course, I skipped creating insights here as well. In this, I have defined how my storage account should be.
Chen, we got a couple of questions while you were showing create the storage account. So the first question is, would this create a hosting plan and app insight as well?
Yes, it will create a hosting plan. And app insights, I desperately didn't create it. I will show it in the demo how to create that.
Okay, and the next thing is, can you please share with us what extension to install? I think we can share that later. And the third point is how to choose which API version should I choose. So I think documentation, Chen, you talked about, right? People can
Yeah.
read more about the documentation. Okay, cool. And there is one more question came. The Unix was disabled because PowerShell is only for Windows. Deepak, did you see somewhere Unix option and it is disabled? I did not get that question.
Yeah, because you can't run if that hosting operating system is not going to support the language. For example, if I choose Python as my function code language, then I can't host it on Windows because it's not supported. That answers?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think Deepak, if you have any other question, you can. Yeah, I think he got his answer. Thank you, Chen.
Oh,
Please
thanks,
carry on.
Ajay. Thanks for taking it. Right. So over here, I have defined how my storage account should be as a template. So I've given the name, location, school, and other stuff. So before this, I just want to answer the question, how to search for the extension. It's pretty easy. Once you open up your Visual Studio Code in the left pane, you see this icon, extensions icon. Just click this and search for the file. And you can extension. So I typed in Bicep. So I see the Bicep extension. So you have to install this, right? But you don't need to worry about it. You don't need to go search. Visual Studio Code is really IT pro friendly. I'll tell you why. If I don't have this extension, if I create a file main.bicep, you get a prompt in your right bottom corner. Hey, you are missing out an extension Bicep for this. Please go ahead and install it. So I just go click S, it's going to install it, right? So you don't need to go search manually and install it. And I also recommend, please go ahead and keep your Visual Studio Code up to date and to the latest version. So that will help you more, right? So back here. So the first step, I'm going to create a storage account. So the storage account is of storage V2, and I've kept the access tier as hot, and I kept this HTTP traffic only to true. I have a tag value here, which will be a parameter suffix. So I've given one parameter suffix to segregate my environment. It be it development, it be it UAT, or be it prod. By naming convention, I'm going to segregate it. Simple as that, right? So that's what the storage account. So if I run this, it's going to create a storage account for me with the name iSharePoint, and it will follow with the suffix, whatever you pass it down. You give it as dev, you give it as prod, you give it as whatever the suffix you keep, that's going to create with that, right? So next comes is the app service plan. So I'm going to choose here the app service plan. So the resource type of that is a web server farm here, right? So when I choose this as a web server farm and give the correct API version, how do I find that API? Which one is the right one or the latest one? So you can go to Azure REST API. So here is the documentation. So you get Azure REST API documentation, and say, for example, I want to search for storage account. Storage account will be under resource management, under resources. Whatever, did I update wrongly? It's okay. I may be wrong. Let me click on storage. Okay, list storage accounts. Okay, this is one other example where it is going to give a web apps storage accounts, whatever. So here you can see the latest API version details. So similarly, if you choose for anything, you can see it. I think compute should be the easy one. For that, I personally feel this compute is, I mean, the search over here is not really good for me. Something we choose is resource management, subscriptions. Okay, this we will consider as an example. I want to query all the subscriptions through our REST API. This is the latest version I can see. So look into this documentation, whatever the responses you get for here, whatever the request body examples definitions, you have to choose that respective API version from here. For any of the Azure resources you want to search, you can get it from this documentation, and this is the source of truth for REST API. So anything you see here, you can get it. And I will also give you another way to identify the APIs when you're running the PowerShell commandlets that I will give it right away. Say, for example, I'm not sure whether I've connected. I'll connect to the. I don't have the easy module. Okay, so when you use a -debug parameter, you will get the API endpoint in your console host. Wherever you're running the PowerShell, it will give you the exact API for that particular command. Let's say, for example, you're creating a new storage account, you use new -az storage account. In that commandlet, add -debug parameter, and you just wait for a prompt. It will prompt you whether to proceed further for the debug preference. Click on S, you're going to get the API endpoint. So that will answer your questions. So that will allow you to pick the right API version for your need. Mostly the API version will not have an impact. If it has an impact, you will get an error that's saying that this API version is not supported. Please choose the next latest version or the legacy version, whatever it is. You just want to pick that from the error message and use that. Right. So in this particular piece of code, I'm going to create a web server app service plan with a consumption. So if I use Y1 and dynamic, it's going to be a consumption plan. If I choose a different SKU, EP1 and TRS premium, that means I'm going to use Elastic Premium 1. I'm really sorry, I can't explain you all the premium plans and other plans available, but that is available in the documentation. We will share you the link. You can go and choose the right hosting plan, and Microsoft has also documented the scenario to choose the hosting plan. Based on your scenario, you can pick that. So this is the application service plan which I have defined, and then comes the creation of the function app. So for that, I'm creating with the resource type websites. So keep a note here. I'm not creating a web application here. I'm creating a function app. You can call it as a subset of a web app, something like that, because all I want to do is to define the kind as function app here. I use the website resource type and declare a kind as function app. And this is going to create a function app for me with the given settings. So what we have given here, create it in the particular resource group location. So resource group, we are going to provision, and it will get the resource group. It's a function in the Bicep. I'm going to get the location property of it and define that here. And I'm going to name the function app as iSharePoint hyphen suffix. That can be dev, that can be your location, something like if you want to use Netherlands as your location, you can put NL, Melbourne, Australia as your location, you can put MEL, whatever the shortcode of your country, whatever it is, you can very well go ahead and do that. And make sure that it's meeting your company standard naming convention, and it is also allowed in Azure. In Azure part, you can't go ahead and give hyphen and other special characters on the storage accounts. So considering that, you can go ahead and give your naming convention. And in this, I am integrating this app service plan to my function app. This piece of code is going to take care of it. So I define the server farm ID and say, hey, this is my hosting plan. So output of this hosting plan will give an ID, right? So I'm going to take that ID. So this is really user friendly for us. Just do this. You're going to explore the properties of the hosting plan. So I want to take the ID of it. I've taken the ID of server farm. So wherever you want to put an output and say for example, here I want to create something called create a tag called hosting plan hosting plan. So here I want to give the hosting plan name. So I can just go ahead and choose here the hosting plan name. Let's see how this is going to work. So let's do the dry run. And if you have any questions, we will pick it up and answer. And we have to go on to the other demo as well. So before this, what I have done, I've made a minor change in my code for the dry run, and I am in my development branch. In the left pane, you can see I'm in development branch. So how many branch I have got? I can see by clicking here, I've got development, I've got release, I've got a main branch. I am working on dev branch. I have not opened the pipeline yet. Give me a minute. I will just quickly open that one and explain you while the code is running. Let me take the pipeline and say its status. So I'm not going to use the command. Let's make it a bit more simpler for everybody's time and as well as to make sure there is a feature in VS Code as well. You can just click on the source control here and see there is some changes happen. Ignore this deck file. That's OK. I've made a change only over here, the hosting plan. Added a tag. Some comments I'm going to give. OK, that's accepted. Is open. Let me close this. Back here. Run this. Good. Let me open the terminal and keep the output ready. Choose the Git and push the file. So when I do this, I'm going to commit from my local machine to the remote where it's going to start my pipeline. So back here to my project, I have a pipeline. I'll show you how this pipeline is being created and how it's going to work. Hope we'll have another, I'll take another 5 more minutes after the session so that will be easier for me to walk through some more steps. So here I've created multiple stage. It's a multi-stage pipeline. The first thing is the build is going to work. It's going to do the build operation. Don't think too much about it. It's just going to copy the file and do something. And it's going to create an environment, a development environment, UAT environment and the production environment. So I get 3 set of function app, 3 different resource groups. And each will have its own suffix and it will segregate the environment. So let this run. I will walk you through the pipeline. Perfect. So here is my build YAML file. So even for this, you don't need to type in by yourself. You have an extension for this called Azure Pipelines. The moment you save it on YAML, unfortunately for this, you will not get a prompt that you have to install Azure Pipelines because there are a lot of other languages or other system configuration files accepts YAML. So VS Code doesn't know for what you're writing in YAML file because it's schema based. So you will not get a prompt for it. So explicitly, you have to go ahead and install Azure pipeline extensions. So if you install this, that's going to take half of your effort and allow you to win the battle. Quite easy. You just go ahead and install it and then go start authoring your pipeline. So how do I do it? Same concept. Just go ahead and do Control Tab. Nothing is going to work for you. Why? Because this system doesn't know that I'm writing a YAML file. For what I'm writing a YAML file, it doesn't know because there is no schema defined on it, right? So how I do that in the backend is in the right bottom corner, I see the language mode as YAML. Choose this and pick Azure Pipelines. That's it. So now the system knows I'm writing a YAML for Azure Pipelines. Now you do Control space, it's going to give you the IntelliSense. So I have given a trigger the starting point for which branch, for all the branches. Actually, we don't do this, right? We just do for development. Only for that you want to include or release. This is purely up to your DevOps engineer to plan. In this demo and a scenario, you have to consider or imagine yourself as a DevOps candidate, one who takes care of provisioning the function host, that's your function app, as well as deploying the functions inside the function app. So I am the author of it and I am going to steer from the operation perspective. In that case, I'm going to do this or consider not an individual person as a bunch of team members. 5 to 10 people who drive DevOps, who takes care of function app hosting, who takes care of functions, will be doing this same kind of work. So here I've given a PR trigger. This means whenever a pull request is being raised on my development and release or a main, the pipeline will start. So I don't need to stop anything. Hey, there is a pull request which is approved. Things are good. Go release it. You have a change, deploy it. Again, there comes patterns and practices, best practices, or somebody says they don't do that, don't do it. If your organization says there's a process, don't deploy it on release without approval, don't do it. So it depends on you. So you can go ahead and choose whenever the PR is raised, which branch to be fired. You can have the branching policies and other stuff. And in this section, I'm going to define what container I need from Microsoft to run, because it's a Microsoft hosted agent. It's not self-hosted agent. This piece of YAML code or whatever the function I'm going to run, the deployment scripts, it needs to run on a computer, right? So that is given by Microsoft. So that's called as a called as Microsoft hosted agent. But Microsoft can give me Ubuntu by default. I don't want Ubuntu to run because I'm not from Ubuntu background. I'm from Windows. I need a Windows machine. My code demands a Windows machine. So in that case, I'm going to define this here. So how do I do that is just type in pool and then you can give the pool name. If it's self-hosted, in my case, it's Microsoft hosted, right? So I just say my image should be, okay, I just pasted. My image should be Windows latest. That means I get Windows 2019. Do understand this is a indented syntax, right? So if you just move something like this, you're going to get a warning. Hey, this is not the right way to do. Or if you do more, you may get an error saying this is not accepted. So you need to make sure that it's meeting the requirement. There are a couple of things you may get a warning if you hover the mouse. Yes, it will give you the friendly message. The first stage here is going to do the build. So what I'm going to do here, Azure CLI task, Azure CLI allows me to do the Bicep build. So I don't need to install Bicep inside my agent, Microsoft hosted agent, and then start working on it. So Bicep you can go download from Microsoft site, search for Azure Bicep. You get the Windows installer, you install it in your local machine, start working on it. But the same installation file is not required on your hosted agent, Microsoft hosted agent. Instead, go call AZCLI Bicep build, then you're good to go. So before this, what exactly that does, I will show you here in my local machine. So where is my templates? So here I have a template. I have an echo. Okay. So I just type in Bicep. Before that, I want to check the Bicep version. I have installed Bicep Windows installer in my machine. Okay, you have to do that yourself. So here I have a Bicep CLI version 0.463. I don't know whether it's latest one, but yes, of course I can update it later. So now I want to do Bicep build main. So if I do this, this is going to do the magic. That transpiled and given me the JSON file. So you see here, this is my ARM template to create function app. So I can't do this in my local machine every time and push it to deploy it. That's not the way we do. As an IT professional, we fully demand on the pipeline to take the work, and automated is our key mission and vision. So in that case, what we do, we go ahead and do this in the pipeline. So I don't want this file. I remove this file. That's what this particular piece of line is going to do. This task is going to do the Bicep build. So once the Bicep build is done, what I get is a JSON file. So I want to copy that file to my release. So I'm copying that file. Copying from where? From the source folder templates, because it's going to keep the file, my main.json in the template folder. And I copy only the JSON file from here and put it on my staging directory. You can preferably put it on a custom folder somewhere, whatever you create and do it, that's up to you. You can do the target folder for your choice. And once the file is being copied, I need to publish that file, or else I don't know that I need to download it. System doesn't know that the way the file is being copied and where I have to download it. So I'm going to publish this file, publish the artifact. So for that, I named my artifact name as templates. So since I named it as template, whatever the file underneath the templates artifact will be used in my release pipeline. So in this demo, we have got two artifacts. Why? Because I'm deploying function app, then I'm deploying functions. So function source code is different, function app template is different. So I want to make sure I get two different artifacts without any confusion, I can go ahead and deploy it and I can map it accordingly. So when I want to do a change only on the configuration of the function, I go to the template folder and work on. When I want to do the same thing on the source code, I'll go to the function source code and change it. Simple as that. Right? Then again, I'm copying the source directory for my functions and I'm publishing it. So this is a too simple task. Right? Then comes the deployment. So here is what I'm gonna define my release pipeline. So I'm gonna say, hey, develop in the stage development environment, you go ahead and deploy this. For this, I've made a condition. When there is a change happened on the development branch only, do this. Because I can't do the development and say that go deploy it on the main branch and deploy it on the production. I'm not going to do that. So I have defined a condition called when the source branch is pointing to develop and success build, then definitely download this task. That means download the artifact templates, download the functions artifact. That means source code for the functions and the template folder, right? Awesome. Then I'm calling a YAML file, template YAML file to deploy the resources. This is that simple, and remaining all repeats for the release and production. You see only the name changes. So the code looks bigger. Actually, what I'm doing is a very simple task, deploying a development, release and production with the same source code, with the same YAML file, sorry. So now I've got this, what this YAML file is going to do. What is this template YAML files? So here I've defined a parameter suffix to make sure I have my environment segregation. I'm calling an API, Azure Resource Manager Template Deployment, to deploy my function app, where I give my deployment scope to subscription. And I've created a service connection, which from the DevOps pipeline, I need to communicate to my Azure portal, right? How that communication happens through a SPN, service principal name. So I've created a service principal and created a service connection. That's nothing but an identity, which makes me to communicate between my DevOps, Azure DevOps and Azure subscription. So I've got this subscription ID. I've given all these details. Here comes the JSON file, which I copied. The Bicep build transpiled and gave me a JSON file, right? That's the file I'm copying here from a staging directory. And I'm giving the parameter to build it. So let's see how that went through. Super. We got a deployment error, but that's okay. This is something at times happens in DevOps pipeline. It says this file is not found. Simply go ahead and rerun it. That should work for you. Okay, I'm running it from the development pipeline again. So what happens if I choose from development? That's going to work. It deploy the code only on development branch. It will not deploy on release and production. I will give you a small tip how to identify that as well. Let this run. Meanwhile, the build is started. Once this pipeline is completed, we should be seeing the function app provisioned here. So that is easier. So what we have done, we have created a build pipeline with multi-staging release pipeline. It's going to combine both. You have a build and the release in a single YAML file. That's nothing but your pipeline as code. And you have got your template file to define it. Why I have to create this template file? Why don't I use it over the build file itself? Yes, very well you can do it. There is no issues in it. I will give you another small example. You may have to deploy development and UAT only, but you don't need to give in the parameters, all these things. Quickly, you have to deploy two different environments. So in that case, template will be too useful where I can loop through and deploy it. So how do I do that? I've got an example in my GitHub. If you look into this particular, okay, I have to get into the pipeline. If you get into this YAML file, here I'm using a looping concept. So I pick up the parameter suffixes. So it's an object with a list which has UAT and dev. So the first dev comes up here, pass to the suffix variable, and that will come up to my override parameter to dev. So first it will create a development environment with the suffix dev, and then it will create a function app with UAT environment, UAT suffix. Similar way, it will go deploy the function app. So here I've shown you how the deployment of function app happens. Here I'm showing how the zip deployment happens. So in this zip deployment, what we are going to do is source code will be zipped and then it will be deployed in our pipeline. So we will see how the pipeline is going on. Hopefully this time it should go good.
Jay, meanwhile, we have one more question.
Sure.
Basically, it is asked, do we have some extension which you would suggest for Terraform?
Yes, you can have a Terraform extension installed as well. You go to the extension and just type in Terraform. I think Microsoft itself has given that, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, you see here Azure Terraform from Microsoft. I also recommend if you choose some extensions for Microsoft native, make sure that the extension is published by Microsoft. You can see here. Of course, there are other extensions given by community. You can very well give a try, but if it's up to your organization again. If they have some concerns or people say that I don't want to go with non-standard stuff, it's up to you. But try everything. Go for community-driven. Try those extensions. But if you want to go with good patterns and practices in stable releases, go for Microsoft extensions. So to answer your question in a nutshell, yes, we have extension for Azure Terraform and VS Code.
Cool, thank you. And I think we are on time, but you continue.
Yeah, I'll take another 5 minutes.
Yes, no problem. Yeah.
So here my deployment is happening. So the first thing is it will go deploy the function app. And it's named as like some random name, and you can see the year, date, time, and stuff. Back here to my subscription, and you can choose deployments and see the magic. The deployments should be happening here. If once the deployment is started, we can see that yeah, it's completed. Actually, you can see the timestamp 11:1. It took 1 minute and 47 seconds. I don't know whether pipeline failed. No, it succeeded. So it worked. The deployment of the function app happened. So now if we go to the portal, go to the resource groups, I can see my development resource group here. Wow. Give up. So I've got a storage account. I've got app service plan, and I've got the function app. Good. So function app is good, but I don't have any functions underneath it. So now the functions is also deployed. What is my function name I've created? Underneath my source, I've got iHome. This is the only function. Right? So how do I create a function? I'll quickly show before that function comes up. So I'm just closing my VS Code. The reason for that, I've opened up a source file where my Azure Functions is there, right? So let me keep it as it is. And okay, let me open up a temporary folder. Nothing is there. Okay. Let me create iDemo some folder. So this is my root folder for my functions. Consider something whatever you name it as. For me, in my case, I named it as iDemo. I just go press F1. You have Azure Functions installed, extension installed. Okay, so go to the extension, check for Azure Functions. So if you see for this extension, install this. Rest all cakewalk. You don't need to worry about it. You don't need to create a folder structure by hand, worry about stuffs. Press F1, click choose for create function or search for create function. The first prompt says, hey, the folder you have selected is not a function project. Do you want to create a new project? Of course, yes, I want to create one. Click on S. Now here comes. You want to choose the language of your choice, PowerShell, JavaScript, TypeScript, or whatever it is. Very well, go do that. You can choose a custom handler as well. As I said, time permits. When I get another opportunity, I will definitely do the custom handler session. For now, I'm going to choose PowerShell. And then the trigger types comes in. Please don't get confused. What is this trigger? What is timer trigger and HTTP trigger and other stuff? As I said, we have another deep dive session on it. I'm going to choose HTTP trigger for now and name it as I demo something. Okay, I home something. Now comes the authentication level. What kind of authentication you want to give for your function? Anonymous, functions, or admin? Anonymous will allow you to access it anywhere from the world without a code. wherein functions and admin will allow you to access this endpoint only with a secret code. So I will go with anonymous for now. I don't have any issues with that. The moment I have done it, this system is going to talk to the environment and gives me the project. I'm all set. How easy it is. See, I've created a function underneath it, which has taken all these required files. I will quickly give what this requirement.psd1 and other files are going to do in the infrastructure. The requirement.psd1 is the first file which gets run to see. First, the host.json will run definitely. So the requirement.psd1 file is to load all your modules to run your application. So now I need to have an AZ module in my function app, because when you're running the function code on the cloud, that compute engine has no clue what you're running. And if you're running a Azure PowerShell or a SharePoint PowerShell, Exchange PowerShell commandlet, it doesn't know that. So you need to define the module name in your requirements.psd1, what module I want to be loaded when my compute engine is up and ready to run. So here you can go ahead and type PS HTML, whatever the module and whatever the version. So I just name it as 3.star. I'm going to get this PS HTML module or any module. Say, for example, something, there is a module for SharePoint, right? Get command, get PNP list. What is the module name? I forgot. PNP partial. So I just copy this. Say, for example, I want this module. I use this here and name it as, so I want 1.7.4. So I run this code every time I deploy it. This requirement.psd1 will be called, and this will go ahead and give you this PNP PowerShell module files. So it will be loaded over there. Good. Then the host.json file is where all your other settings will be there. Application insight settings. By default, your sampling for your application settings will be enabled. So that means you will not get the complete request logs. If you want to enable it, you just go ahead and say that I want the complete logging. If you have application insights to false, so it will keep you pay some more money for this, then you will do that. So these are all the files for that, and you can define your proxies. Considering the time, I'm not getting in deep on it, but definitely I will cover up this as my blog or something and share it with you all. So this is what in a nutshell it will do. How many modules you can load here is maximum 10 modules you can load. You can't load more than 10. In that case, what you can do is you can very well go ahead and create a folder called modules in your project root folder and save all your custom modules underneath this, like using the PowerShell gallery. Say something like name PS HTML path modules. So if you don't have anything defined in over here, the system knows there is a module folder and it will go ahead and auto load the modules underneath it in your function host. So let's see. Wow, the function is completed. So if I'm back here, I see things are good here. What this function is going to do, I'll tell you. So this is a very base HTTP code. It will not do anything, just to say hello world. That's it. So I've got some JSON body here. It's a plain PowerShell code. If you are good in PowerShell, you will very well understand it. I'm getting a custom object, and it's a demo webhook, and I've got a custom event type and the message. It's going to pass this message back to me, but there is one small catch here for the demo. Let me close this and come back to our folder. If you look into the code, when I create a function, I get 3 different files. In short, I'll be getting 2. The third one is of no use. You can't make use of this one. So the run.ps1 file is the entry point. So this is where your code runs. So how this knows the trigger is HTTP, that is defined in your functions.json file. So this functions.json file defines your authentication, what type of trigger you're using in the binding, and what is your input and stuff. I've used the post method instead of a get method. I'm using a post method, right? So I've executed it. Once I've got this, I'll get a URL, some URL like this, right? So which has an authentication code and stuffs. I've used this URL in my Azure DevOps to capture when there's an event happening. That's our demo, and that will be our last final one to before closing. So I have created the development infrastructure, right? Before that, we will show you how to go ahead and do another 2 releases. So I just go to resource groups. I've got only one SharePoint-dev. I don't have UAT and production, right? So for that, what I do is I go to my source code. I create a pull request. I've got 75 file change because I've installed the modules. That's okay. I'll say dev to release, create the PR. So the pull request is created, which will allow me to merge to the main, that is to the production release. So I'm okay with that. I don't have a trouble. So I just approved it, complete the merge. So once this is done, what happens? Have to be a bit careful here to do that because I did it on the production branch, right? So I just go move this. I've done it on the production. So that will impact my main branch. So my reference head is on the main branch. So obviously the main branch code is updated now. My pipeline knows there is a condition here and the main branch is updated. It goes and run the pipeline. You can see this pipeline is running. So what happens now? The build will start. It will move to the development, release and production. But the impact will happen only on production. Development release will be skipped. Because there is no change on development and release. I raised completely to production environment and said run only there. This two will be skipped and this environment will get impacted and you will get a new resource group like what do you see here? Like I SharePoint dev, you will see another one called I SharePoint-PRD with the same functions. So now that I have got one endpoint, right? I home endpoint here. So this is a simple REST API, which we have built successfully, where I want to use this URL to listen something happening on my pipeline for another demo. That's it. So if you see here, development and release is passed, but it shows a green tick mark. It will be little bit confusing. This didn't run at all because if it is running, you will see the time elapsed over here. So once the production is completed, I will show you. There will be a time stamp shown here. It has taken 2 to 3 minutes to run. So that's how you will come to know about it. So see here, this 2 is skipped. And it directly went to the production because I completed my PR on the main branch. If I do it on release branch, I will get a release branch. So it's a bit safer. You can give the release branch to someone and say that, hey, go work on it. I want something on release. Let development team take some more time to work on it. I want this to be released quickly. You do it on release and later you will merge to a different branches. Very well, you can do that. So now I come to another small piece of demo. I have got a webhook pipeline, which is nothing to do. It just takes a Ubuntu image and runs say hello world. So if I run this pipeline, what happens? It will just say hello world. In the project settings of the DevOps, if you know, there is a feature called service hooks. So I want to monitor this whenever something is happening on this. I can't go every time and see what is happening to my pipeline, right? So what I've done is I've written a webhook, configured a webhook. If I say written, please consider that as a configuration because I'm not a developer. So when I open it, you see when there is a build complete, I say there is a webhook name. This is a build pipeline name, webhook name. When it is success, throw that message to my endpoint URL, that is to my function app URL. Okay. So what happens here? Okay, yeah, you can very well do this also. And click on test. My development is up and running. This process, what happened here now? Is my development running? That's okay. Under the hood, this is what it should do. Okay, you see the request here. The request is being passed to this particular URL. And it will give me this data. This is awesome, right? So this is the response, successful response I got. So this is the up and running URL for me. Probably the key might have been changed. Let's see. Let me come to my home. This is my development environment. So you have to be specific on the URL because the URL changes for each environment. Get the function URL and see how this is happening. Okay, you see here the code is changed. So let me grab this code to my service webhooks. I do this and test it. I'm all good. This time it should give me the success message. Fantastic. So see the request. You will see more or less the same information. What I have done here. This is a dummy and I've got a response back. Excellent. Finish it. Leave it as it is. Now, how do I test this? I come back here, go to the logs. This function is up and running already, and I'm connected to the live stream. Now I go to my pipelines, webhook, run this pipeline. Consider any pipeline is running. That's only one branch. I'm just running it. Now you sit back, relax for 2-3 minutes. This pipeline will do the job. It will get a queue. Once it's queued, it will complete, and that response body will be given, and then our function app endpoint will be invoked. It just says hello world if everything is good. Super. So this job is completed.
We got a question.
Yeah, sure. Now I'm done.
What is Webhook?
I'm full for question now.
Yeah.
I'm available.
Cool.
Yeah, let me see the question.
The last one, yeah.
What it is used for. Okay, so here webhook, for what I'm using here is just to make an integration. When something is happening at any given source, I want to capture that and work on that part of code. So for example, I have a pipeline which allows me to create a webhook, right? So that means it will give the post response body back to me that something has happened. I can configure it and listen to that event. So in short, I just go ahead and see what been happened in that particular time. I cannot keep monitoring it. Instead, I register it and I get that event and I process that data in my environment. For that, I can use a webhook. You can very well think about the SharePoint list event listener, or you subscribe to some kind of an event and wait for it. Similar to that, when there is an action happened, webhook capture it and it will allow me to process it. So I have created my webhook session through the function app, and I'm processing that data in my function post. It can be at any point. It can be you can run it your own HTTP primitive service, and you can very well do that as well. So there is no problem in it. Apologies, I couldn't get deep dive on the bindings and triggers because this session is not meant for that. This session is purely about to show how Bicep helps you to build a pipeline in multiple flavors and then deploy it. So you have any questions on the Bicep and other things? I'm ready to answer now.
I think you have answered most of the questions. If anyone has question and you want to come out from the mute, can also do that.